Just for everyone's info, we are experiencing some minor IT problems, so just bear with us. Thank you. That would be my issue. All right, I'm advised that we are ready to go. So, let's give me a minute here because we're somewhat convoluted today, but we will get through this. All right, welcome everyone. First of all, as required under the Planning Act, a public meeting is being held prior to the committee making a decision on these applications. And I would start out with a little caution. We live stream the meeting on our YouTube channel, and the recording is available after the meeting. Because meetings are accessible to the public in all of these ways, video or audio recording by members of the public is not permitted in these council chambers. This is to ensure that all attendees and those who come to make a deputation feel at ease, and we wouldn't want it any other way. And so we thank you for your cooperation. Got that out of the way. All right. I will now introduce the members of the Committee of Adjustment. We have Councillor Yeo, Mr. Finn, Mr. Strangway, Mr. Erickson, Ms. Archer, Ms. Richardson, and I'm Mr. Robertson. All right. And staff, I'll go through my list here. We've got the Director of Development Services, Ms. Berry, and she's on Zoom. Welcome, Ms. Berry. And we've got, let's see, Mr. Shahid and Ms. Evans, our planners, and a wonderful job they do. So thank you, folks. We've also got Mr. Lahaye as the Secretary-Treasurer, and Mr. McKinnon, who is the Supervisor of Plans Review and Inspections, and maybe our most important person here, Ms. Crockford, who is our Recording Secretary. Very good. Before I get to the agenda, I believe both planners would like to speak to some issues. And I would ask planners that you identify your issue with the number on the board there, the 3-1, whatever the number is. So who's first?
I'll go first, Mr. Chair. So with respect to item 3.1.8 on the agenda, it's a simple edit really. The file number should include both the minor variance application file number, which is there, but also the consent application file number, D03-2024-022. Recommend to approve the agenda as amended.
All right. Ms. Evans?
My item is number 3.1.12. The address of the subject property should be 26 Ridgewood Road, not 24.
All right, and thank you for that. As a result of that information, folks, I'm looking for a motion toward the agenda as amended. Mr. Strangway, Ms. Richardson, any further comments or questions on the agenda as amended? All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Being none. The minutes of our previous meeting. Are there comments or questions before I ask for a motion? Being none, do I have a Ms. Archer, Mr. Finn? Any further comments or questions on that motion? All those in favor? And that carries. All right. All right, for the benefit of everyone that's here and online, the committee will hear comments, gather information, and may ask questions to clarify statements made. The committee may ask and answer questions or redirect questions to the appropriate person. Please note that any information or comments given to the committee during this meeting, they are considered evidence. We will first hear from staff and then the applicant or his or her agent. We will then hear from any person in support of or from those who have questions, concerns, or are opposed to the application. Finally, the applicant or his or her agent will have an opportunity to respond to any of the statements made to the committee. As we proceed through the applications, if you are here because of a particular application and you wish to speak to it, if you're here in person, I would ask that you raise your hand and I will acknowledge that and ask you to come to the podium at the front. There's a button there, and when the red light comes on, you are able to speak and we're able to hear you. So if you would do that, we would certainly appreciate that. So as indicated, state your name and press the button. If online, when you come online and we can see or hear you, I would ask that you give us your name, and then I will advise whomever wishes to speak that we will afford you 10 minutes to make your presentation. No one has ever gone that far, but we do afford you that time. Usually it's much shorter than that. But if you're one of those persons that likes to speak, then and you feel you just can't get it all in within those 10 minutes, then I will ask the committee if they will afford you a couple of more minutes. But I don't think that's ever happened. So most folks were able to get it in within the specified time. So thank you for that. All right. Moving right along here. As soon as I get my act in order. All right. We're dealing with file number D20-2024-072, and this is 7971 Highway 35, Geographic Township of Laxton. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in the former Township of Laxton with access from Highway 35. The property currently contains a two-story dwelling and a shed. The proposal seeks to facilitate the construction of an additional residential unit, what I'll refer to as an ARU, and a detached garage in the front yard. The aerial imagery shown on the slide shows the approximate location of the proposed development. I should note for clarity, the United Township of Laxton, Digby, and Longford zoning bylaw, which is the applicable zoning bylaw here, permits detached garages to be in the front yard. As such, relief is solely required for the ARU proposed to be located in the front yard. The lot itself is quite large for a residential property at around 142 acres in total size. The proposed development is to be located in the appropriately zoned and designated area in the front yard with access from an existing gravel driveway. Both the proposed ARU and detached garage will be 1 story in height and in a portion of the property that is largely surrounded by an existing dense tall vegetation, restricting any visibility from both the road and neighboring properties. The proposed ARU in comparison to the existing 2-story dwelling is smaller in both height and gross floor area. The images on the slide provide some context to the proposed location of the development. You can see that the area has been cleared out and there's a dense tree cover in between the proposed location and Highway 35, shown on the bottom left corner of the slide. With respect to comments received after the report, the supervisor of Part 8 Sewage Systems commented that they have no issue with the minor variance proposal as it relates to private on-site sewage disposal. The Kawartha Region Conservation Authority also stated they have no concerns and that a permit is not required. All in all, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. Are there questions of the planner? All right, being none. Is the applicant here or online? Do you wish to speak to it? Would appear not. Is there anyone here online that wishes to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Councillor?
As printed.
Do I have a seconder? Ms. Richardson. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Wherever you are, your application is approved. We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-074, and this is 7 Bronte Lane, Geographic Township of Earlham. And Ms. Evans, go ahead, please.
Thank you. The subject property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned residential type 1 or R1 zone and open space or OS zone under the Township of Earlham zoning bylaw 6-87. The property is located on the southern shore of Sturgeon Lake. It has frontage on County Road 24 and Scotch Line Road, being year-round municipal roads. Bronte Lane is a private road which runs through the middle of the subject property and functions similar to a driveway, being off of Scotch Line Road. Bronte Lane is used to access one other lot to the east of the subject property. The property contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1977, a boathouse, and a storage building. The proposal is to recognize an existing storage building and to construct a detached garage with space for storage, a workshop, and an additional residential unit, or ARU. Relief is needed from section 5.1.3b, which provides that an accessory building or structure that is not attached to the main building shall not be erected in any yard other than the interior side or rear yard. The proposed detached garage ARU is to be located in the front yard, and the existing storage building is located in the front yard. The proposed garage ARU and the existing storage building can be seen on the right side of the slide. For this property, the southern lot line that abuts County Road 24 is the front lot line, so the area between that road and the dwelling is the front yard, which is in green on the slide. So the property has an extensive front yard, which limits the opportunity to locate an accessory structure somewhere that would be permitted by the zoning bylaw. The existing location of the storage building and the proposed location of the detached garage ARU being in the front yard will still allow for a significant amount of amenity space in the front yard. And there are other properties in the surrounding area that do have accessory structures in the front yard. So the proposal is in keeping with the existing built form. The slide contains a photo of the existing dwelling, the proposed location of the garage ARU, and a view of Bronte Lane as it enters the neighboring property, being 12 Bronte Lane. As seen in these photos, the property is heavily vegetated, so the visibility of the accessory structures would be limited when viewing the property from the street, and it's not anticipated that their location would impact the residential character of the property. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage system, stating that the sewage system proposal needs to be revised to include all components of the minor variance proposal, to confirm compliance with the Ontario Building Code. So condition 3 has been added to ensure this occurs, and this new condition has been printed out and provided to committee members. Kawartha Region Conservation Authority commented that they have no concern and that a permit will be required. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members on the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to conditions identified within the report and the condition added at today's meeting as printed and provided to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Very agreeable group so far. All right. Is the applicant here online and wishing to speak to the applicant? Yes, ma'am. And your name is?
Vanessa Archer from TD Consulting.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Catherine, for your report. I'm just here if there's any additional questions, but everything seems like it's there.
Well, they seem to be quite an agreeable group today, but we'll see how it goes. So are there any questions of the applicant? All right, being none, thank you very much for that. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Excuse me. Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to this application? Being none, committee, where are we? Ms. Richardson.
As amended.
As amended, please. Mr. Erickson, second. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Your application is approved. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-075, and this is 375 Snug Harbor Road, Geographic Township of Fenland. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated along the shoreline of Sturgeon Lake with access from Snug Harbor Road. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling, a detached garage with an additional residential unit, what I'll refer to as an ARU, on the second story, an in-ground pool, a storage shed, and a pool shed. In this application, there are no new structures being constructed. The application is to recognize the existing ARU on the property, which according to the property owner was constructed in 2012. The ARU complies with all provisions of the zoning bylaw with the exception of the minimum lot area required for an ARU on a lot with private servicing. In order for lots with private servicing to be eligible for an ARU, they must be a minimum of 4,000 square meters. The intention behind this provision when it was created was to identify a minimum lot size in relation to being able to support an ARU on private servicing. As a result, the review of this provision places heavy dependence on the help of our Building and Septic Division, specifically the Supervisor of Part 8 Sewage Systems. After discussing the application with the Supervisor, condition number 2 on the report was added to ensure the septic is able to support the ARU, and if not, any upgrades or improvements are completed to the satisfaction of the Supervisor with the Ontario Building Code in mind. After the writing of the report, the Supervisor was able to provide a formal comment stating that the existing sewage system does not have the capacity to service additional sewage flows generated from the ARU. They also found that evidence indicates a system was installed to service the ARU without the benefit of a permit. The Supervisor requested for a condition to be added for their approval, which was already added and detailed in the report. Notwithstanding the comments made by the Supervisor Part 8 Sewage Systems, other comments received after the writing of the report include the Kawartha Region Conservation Authority, who commented that they have no concern with the application and that a permit will not be required from them. Overall, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the planner? Ms. Archer.
Sorry. I'm just concerned about 8 months being enough if they have to do a lot of work on this septic. Could it be extended to 12 months possibly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the 8 months, this was a timeline that I've discussed with the Supervisor. And this is what we typically, we always go with the 8 months. So I'm not, it's not my expertise to how long it takes to install these things. That's why I rely on her. And she said that 8 months was appropriate, but if we would like to extend it to 12 months, that's all okay by me.
My concern was it's over the winter months, basically.
Mr. Strangwick?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just wondered, this was built in 2012. Would this building not have had a building permit at that time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, I don't believe a building permit was acquired for the structure.
Thank you.
Anything further from committee? All right, being none. Is the applicant here, or is the applicant online and wishes to speak to it? Mr. Shi?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to bring up the applicant was unfortunately not able to attend the meeting today. Last minute, he had to go to a funeral, so he notified me, but for that reason, he's not able to attend.
All right, thank you. That being the case, then, is there anyone here online that wishes to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right, being none. Committee, Ms. Archer?
Just one further question, and continuing on Mr. Strangway's line of questioning. Are the applicants now required to pay the permit fees for that property for 12 years ago?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll defer that over to our building and septic representative here.
McKenna?
Through you, your chair, we do have a permit for a garage from 2010. I'm hoping that this is the structure that you're referring to. Yeah. With the ARU and the septic system, those applications would be subject to our building bylaw. All fees would be applicable.
Well, they'll have to pay like double or whatever the charge is now?
Whatever it states within our building bylaw.
And again, I would remind committee that enforcement is not part of our mandate, so just, did you wish to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve it, but I would like to extend the 8 months to 12 months, just because of being over the winter months.
Do we have a seconder? Mr. Strangway? Do you wish to speak further to it, Ms. Archer? No, Mr. Strangway? Any further comments or questions with respect to the amended motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. All right, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-076, and this is 32 Beachley Lane, Geographic Township of Laxton. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated in the former township of Laxton on the shore of the Gull River. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling, a boathouse, cabin, and a shed. The application seeks to recognize the existing cabin and shed on the property. To help provide some context here, the property owners who have stated they purchased the property in October of 2021 are unaware of the date of construction for any of the structures and claim these have been existing since the date of their purchase. Based on aerial imagery, it does appear that both the cabin and the shed were existing prior to the ownership of the current owners and were constructed sometime after 2008. In order to recognize these structures, relief is required from the water setback, interior side yard setback, and the minimum lot area required for a cabin. The existing water setback measured from the cabin is equivalent to the existing water setback from the current dwelling. Looking at the shed, although the shed is closer to the shoreline, it is used solely for the storage of wood and does not contain habitable space, nor is habitable space being introduced within the structure. The shed itself is a small structure at 7.29 square meters in size, and with its minimal footprint has only a minimal presence on the property. The cabin, although existing on an undersized lot, is an appropriate structure considering the seasonal use of the property, and many of the other surrounding lots with similar lot sizes also contain a dwelling and various accessory structures constructed later on. After the writing of the report, the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems commented that a sewage system use permit has been located for this property, and that the sewage system permit does not have the allowable capacity for the additional sewage flows generated from the cabin. A sewage system replacement would be necessary to continue with the proposal of an accessory cabin, and a condition was requested and has been included in the revised condition list provided to our committee members. The Kawartha Region Conservation Authority also commented that they have no concern with the application and the applicant does not require a permit from them. All in all, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the revised conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Being? No.
Yes, I read from your report that you've compared it to other residential properties in the area, but it seems to me that the size of the property is basically 100% smaller than it should be. And looking at the plan which is attached to the report, there doesn't appear to be any residential lots on the same side of the Gull River. When you say you've compared it to other residential lots, are you talking about the other side of the Gull River?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so I looked actually on both sides of the river. So for example, I looked at 38 Beachley, 30 Beachley, 90 Beachley, 39 Beachley. On the other side of the river, it's very similar, 267 Nevison, 265 Nevison, 261 Nevison. All of these, especially on the other side of the river, very similar lot sizes. And all of these lots contain dwellings. Majority of them, sorry, not the majority of them, but I'd say around half or more of them were seasonal and had various accessory structures constructed later on after the construction of their dwellings.
Thank you.
Anything further from committee? Ms. Richardson?
Through you. So although you're recommending 8 months to obtain the sanitary sewer, how long after that do they have to construct it? Because is 8 months okay because they have a year or 2 years or whatever to install the sanitary sewers, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So they're not constructing anything, so they're just recognizing what's there. So they essentially have 8 months to upgrade their sewage system to the satisfaction of the supervisor. Does that clarify?
Well, they're upgrading and they require a permit. So I'm presuming if you're upgrading, you're maybe installing more sewage lines or whatever? Are you not? And therefore, do you have just 8 months to do it, or do you have 2 years to do it, or is there a timeline?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll just defer that over to our building and septic representative here.
The Ontario Building Code has timelines set out for the length of a permit. So we would, if extended, we could enforce the Ontario Building Code if it went too long, if that's what you're asking. Through your chair, sorry.
And so what is the timeline?
As per the Ontario Building Code, it's 6 months, but I believe that we have a bylaw that states 1 year, and then we can revoke that permit and then begin enforcement.
Anything further from committee? Mr. Strang?
I don't believe I saw it in the report. I'm just wondering, excuse me, what is actually in the cabin? Is it a kitchen and a washroom, or do we know what's in the cabin as far as, sanitary services and so on?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, there's no sanitary services in the cabin. There's no plumbing attached to the cabin.
So this is just simply based on further occupants in there that would be using the sanitary services in the cottage, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm sure if Matt McKinnon would like to expand on it, he can, but yeah, it's just because the additional habitable space that's introduced increases the need for capacity of the septic system.
Mr. McKinnon, did you wish to add it?
Through you, your chair, I think Ahmed covered that fairly well. Any extra habitable space is an increase of flow on a sewage system, whether it be a living room or a bedroom.
Anything further from committee? Mr.
I thought the sewage capacity was based on the number of fixtures
in each building on the property.
Well, we're hearing its occupants, so would you like to elaborate?
Through you, your chair, as I stated before, any habitable space does have an increase of flow on a sewage system, whether it's, again, a bedroom or a living room. The fixture units do come into play, but again, so does habitable space.
All right. Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here or online and wish to speak to the application? Apparently, we are on Zoom. All right. Is it? Oh, there we go. Hello. Good afternoon, ma'am. And your name is? I can't hear you, and you look like you're riding a motorcycle.
How do I? Wait. So hold on. Hold on. Sorry, sorry. I had no choice. I had to go pick up my kid, but I'm here. I'm just listening to what you guys were saying, and yeah, the cabinet's just used for like. We haven't used it yet, but the whole purpose was like to have additional people sleep in there, just my family, but we haven't used it ever since we found out that there's been issues. So, yeah, whatever that needs to be done to get this approved, we're willing to work with it.
All right, thank you for that. Could you state your name for us, please?
It's Minoja Ganeshalingam.
All right, thank you very much for that. We appreciate it. Now I'll just see if there's any of the committee members have a question of you.
Sure.
All right. Being none, thank you very much for taking the time. Now we'll go on to...
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Councillor Yeo, as amended?
As amended.
Do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? Your application is approved.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We are now dealing with file number D20-2024-077, and this is 81 Front Street West, former village of Bobcaygeon. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated in the former village of Bobcaygeon, near the intersection of Head Street and Front Street West. The property currently contains a one-story dwelling with an attached garage, a detached garage, and a shed. The proposal seeks to construct a front yard deck attached to the existing dwelling. The proposed deck will be uncovered and primarily serve as a sitting area for the property owners, providing a view of the Bobcaygeon River across the street. Currently, the property does not contain any accessory structures in the front yard. All existing accessory structures are situated in the rear yard, away from the public. Although a deficient lot coverage is proposed, the existing lot coverage is also non-complying at around 34.4%. So really, any proposed structure would require relief from the existing deficient lot coverage. The construction of the deck will not greatly increase the impact of built form aesthetic-wise, as it will be uncovered and is very similarly set back to the property to the east. As shown on the left image on the slide, the east neighboring property and their deck can be seen in the background. Their deck is covered. The proposed deck will be similarly placed, and for reference, you can see the existing patio on the subject property, the existing patio stone, shown on the image is where the deck will be placed. Additionally, the property to the west is very closely set back to the street in comparison to the subject property, and you can see that in the picture in the top right corner and also in the bottom right corner as well. With respect to comments received after the writing of the report, the Kawartha Region Conservation Authority commented they have no concern with the application and that a permit has already been obtained. A comment was also received from the property owner of 77 Front Street West, the neighboring property to the east, who voiced their support of the variance and its approval. No further comments were received. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, questions of the planner? Mr. Finn, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just wondering what the detached garage at the rear of the property is being used for, and could it be changed in order to comply with the coverage?
Mr. Shade?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't believe the detached garage in the rear yard is being used to, for parking anymore. But I'll let the applicant answer that if they'd like to, in terms of what it's currently being used for. In terms of converting the structure in order to comply with the use, could you expand on that?
Just hold that thought there until the applicant. Any further questions of the planner? Mr. Erickson.
Chair, it's not a question, it's just an observation. When you draw a line from the west property, with that house way back there on the top right, over to the east property, that basically covers the area of the deck, which is generally accepted in planning for setback.
So is there a question there then to the planner? Why the
That's
variance?
just an observation, but this is pretty simple.
All right, I'm kind of looking for questions right now, if you would. All right, are there any further questions of the planner? All right, is the applicant here or online?
Hi, yeah, this is Melissa Ryle, I'm here.
All right, go ahead, please, Ms. Lau.
I don't really have any comments, I'm just here if there's any questions.
Mr. Finn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd asked the planner what the detached garage was being used for and whether any consideration was given to either doing away with it or reducing its size in order to comply with the lot coverage.
Ms. Ryle?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so the back garage, I think originally was used as storage, or potentially for storage of a boat, I think. I just use it as a workshop, basically. I have my saw in there and a bunch of wood and that's it. So it's a big structure, it is a full-size garage, so I don't really, because it's a smaller house, I don't have a lot of storage. I also don't have a full basement, so it's nice to have the extra storage there. So I had no plans to tear that down. The shed, on the other hand, I could potentially tear down, which is just a little 10 by 10. There was a lot of pieces on that property when I bought it a year ago.
Mr. Finn, follow-up?
No, thank you.
Mr. Erickson, did you have a question? No? Are there any further questions of the applicant? All right, thank you, Ms. Rao. We appreciate you taking the time. We'll see how it goes here.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Is there anyone, is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Mr. Richardson.
As recommended.
I see Mr. Strangway is a second. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? That carries. And Ms. Rao, your application is approved.
Just wanted to say thank you very much.
Righty. Moving on to file number D20-2024-078, and this is lot 70 Randall Street, former town of Lindsay. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The subject property is designated residential under the Town of Lindsay Secondary Plan. The property is subject to Ontario Regulation 35520 zoning order, City of Kawartha Lakes. So the property is subject to a minister's zoning order, or MZO. Section 47 of the Planning Act authorizes the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing to issue MZOs that regulate the use of land in Ontario, similar to a zoning bylaw. This Ontario regulation provides that the zoning requirements of the Residential 3 or R3 zone under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75 apply to a single detached dwelling, apart from unique provisions for front yard setback, interior side yard setback, maximum gross floor area, and maximum lot coverage. These provisions are established by the MZO. The lot is in a new subdivision that received draft plan approval in 2019 at the western boundary of the former Town of Lindsay at the intersection of Colborne Street West and Highway 35. The subdivision contains new development at varying stages of completion, with some completed dwellings closer to Highway 35 and dwellings that are partially under construction. The subject lot is located in a portion of the development that is currently vacant. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling. Section 8.2F of the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback is 1.2 meters. While the majority of other lots in this development have narrower frontage and are deeper, this lot has a wider frontage, but it's not as deep. And this configuration results in larger side yard setbacks and a narrow rear yard setback. In this case, the rear yard really functions more as an interior side yard, and the southern interior side yard functions more like a rear yard. The photos on the left show the current state of development, with the subject lot currently in the vacant area. The rear lot line of the subject property abuts 5 Charles Street, which contains a 2-story single detached dwelling, as seen in the photo on the top right. The dwelling on 5 Charles Street also has a reduced rear yard setback. While the amenity space at 5 Charles Street is in the northern interior side yard, the amenity space on the subject property is to be in the southern interior side yard, so privacy issues while using the 2 amenity spaces are not anticipated. The Building and Septic Division Supervisor, Plans Review and Inspections commented that spatial separation could be a potential issue, but that this can be dealt with at the building permit stage. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies. I received a call from the owner of 5 Charles Street stating concerns about the location of the lot being adjacent to 5 Charles Street and the proposed rear yard setback. The subject lot was part of the plan that received draft plan approval in 2019. The proposed rear yard setback is the result of the shape of the lot, again having wider frontage and smaller depth. And the subject lot will be configured quite similarly to 5 Charles Street, with a more narrow rear yard and a larger interior side yard. No other comments of concern, or no other comments rather, received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Ms. Archer.
Through you, please, to the planner. 5 Charles Street, can you tell me the depth of their rear yard setback? Is it 1.2 as well?
Through the chair, I can use our air photos to get an approximate measurement, but just give me a minute while it loads here.
While you're waiting for that, can you tell me, is that property fenced at the back?
Through the chair, the setback from the dwelling on 5 Charles Street to the rear lot line is about 2.7 meters. I can't tell on the air photos if it is fenced or not, but I can take a look at Google Street View. Through the chair, it doesn't look like it has a fence, but I'm not sure when this photo was taken by Google.
You spoke with the owners. They were fine after you explained what was going on?
Through the chair, the owners may be in attendance today, so I'll wait for them to speak to that.
Anything further from Ms. Richardson? Go ahead.
Through you, why are we allowing 36 months, not the typical 24?
Through the chair, because of where the subdivision is at right now in terms of being completely vacant, there's no roads, the lots haven't been kind of established yet. I did discuss it with the applicant and we landed on 3 years being a little bit more appropriate just because of where we're at in the stage of development.
Anything further from committee? Oh, I got two. Mr. Erickson, go ahead.
This application and the next application for these wide, shallow lots, will there be decks permitted on these properties?
Through the chair, on the sketch that was provided, there was no indication that there was going to be a deck that would be outside of the building envelope that they drew. If they did propose a deck, that would be kind of a very narrow place to have a deck in the first place. I think their amenity space is going to be in that southern interior side yard. But of course, if they were ever going to propose a new structure, they would need to come through this process again, and we would have to evaluate that new proposal.
Follow-up question through the chair. If there's a difference in grades, will the heights of the potential decks be a problem for privacy?
Through the chair, I mean, as part of this proposal, there's no deck in question, so I think that is maybe a bit of a more hypothetical question. I don't know if there's going to be a change in grade. I don't know what the height of the decks would be, so I think that would be something that would have to be evaluated if and when it came through again, if they are even going to propose a deck in that location.
Mr. Finn?
Yes, through the chair, you indicated that these lots were part of the original plan of subdivision. What was the intended use of the lots at the time of the approval of the plan of subdivision?
Through the chair, I believe they were always proposed to be residential lots.
And was there ever any site plan approval?
Through the chair, I will defer that question to the Director of Development Services.
All right. Ms. Berry, would you care to help us out then?
Sure, thank you. Mr. Chair, through you. So there are site plan provisions in this subdivision through the subdivision agreement. At the time of draft approval and as the subdivision agreement is developed, put together, finalized, it's entirely possible, and this is a good example of that, where the fine-tuning details are yet to be determined when a house typology is determined by the builder or on occasion by a new owner, if they've already made agreements with the builder to construct a certain housing typology. So not unexpected or unanticipated, especially in the case of irregular lots, that we could have a situation like what is before the committee today for these slight, let's say, irregularities in the zoning. So yes, to answer the member's question, there are agreements in place that govern the overall use for the draft approved plan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything further from committee? Mr.
Through you, I don't know if this is a big concern, but Randall spelled different, and some places it's with one L and some with two, and I don't know if that makes a difference when it's going to be registered.
Ms. Adams?
Through the chair, I don't believe it makes a difference, but from what I've seen, it usually has one L.
Appendix A, it has 2, and Appendix C, it has 1.
Do we chalk it up to just a typing error or what?
Just a typo on my part. My apologies.
Anything further from committee? I have a question. I'm just curious. On page 3 of 8, we talk about the minister's zoning order prevailing over the local zoning bylaw. So if I'm reading this correctly, then, even though the minister we may have a minister's zoning bylaw, the Ontario Regulation 355/20 prevails over the minister's zoning order?
Ontario Regulation 35520 is the minister's zoning order. So it prevails over the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw 2000-75.
Then I guess I'm just a little confused. Why then are we able to ask for variances when in fact we know that's the case?
Through the chair, the way that the MZO was written was that the MZO gives unique provisions for front yard setback, interior side yard setback, maximum gross floor area, and maximum lot coverage. Anything else that's not listed as those unique provisions revert back to the R3 zone in the Lindsay zoning bylaw. So they didn't, as part of the MZO, there was no special rear yard setback, so they go back to and have to comply with the R3 zone.
Thank you. Very good. Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here? Oh, Erickson, question?
The zoning order on page 7 and 8, should that not be included as a specific condition rather than just referred to?
Ms. Evans?
Through the chair, I think I'll defer that to the Director of Development Services so I can get some direction on that too.
Ms. Berry, we're doing our best to keep you busy. Go ahead, please.
Sure, Mr. Chair, no problem. I just, if you don't mind, I'd just like to ask the member for clarification. I am looking at the report. I am looking at pages 7 and 8 that are embedding the MZO details into the appendix. Would you mind just clarifying your question for me, please?
Mr. Erickson?
Should pages for the minister's zoning order, should they not be included as a condition for the approval rather than just be mentioned?
Ms. Berry?
The relief, thank you for clarifying. The relief that's being sought is what the conditions outlined on the first page of the report speak to. The zoning order is in place, just like the zoning order is in place, just like the zoning bylaw is in place. Forgive me, I think I understand the nature of your question. Are you suggesting that the condition refer to the zoning order itself as opposed to a condition referring to like simply a zoning bylaw?
No, I'm suggesting that it be as a part of the condition.
Well, let me ask this. We didn't put it in as a condition when we wrote it up. So I guess my question is, we obviously had rationale for that. It wasn't because we didn't feel it was necessary, Ms. Berry?
The order is in play. The variance isn't conditional on the order, right? So the condition is, the conditions are doing two things. One, they are allowing for construction to proceed in accordance with what the drawings are that are contained in Appendix C. And the second, of course, that they be done within a certain time frame. So just like the conditions don't refer to the zoning bylaw, so too do they not need to refer to the order. The order is legislated, as is the bylaw, so there isn't any separate acknowledgement that is needed. The building permit issuance already takes into account the order. It's a tool just the same as the zoning bylaw is a tool. I hope that goes part way, if not all way, to tackling your question, member.
Yeah, no, I think you laid it out very well, so I'm very clear on it. So, all right. Anything further, question-wise? Ms. Sargent?
If I'm reading it correctly on this, the zoning requirements, page 8 of 8, the minimum front yard setback is 4 meters. We have 4.5, so why can't we just put it, and that would give another half a meter on the back end?
Ms. Evans, I'll go to you for that one.
Through the chair, I believe it's written as 4.5, 4 to the main front wall and 6 to a garage. So there is a 6-meter setback, which I assume is going to be an attached garage. So if we were to move it closer to the front, then we would be seeking relief the other way for the front yard setback.
Make it a little easier for the people behind them to give them another half a meter, though. We could, but then they'd have to do this again, so ignore me.
Anything further from committee? All right, is the applicant here or online? Yes, would you come forward, please? Your name?
Good afternoon, my name is Lisa Kletz. I'm a junior planner at DG Biddle and Associates. Today here to represent our client, Lindsay 2017 Developments Incorporated. Thank you so much, Ms. Evans, for your presentation. Just wanted to reiterate to some of the information that was said. The lot is located within the phase 3 of the subdivision that is currently being built. Phase 3 is currently under the review with planning and development and engineering, and is not currently in construction, and that's why the extension for the conditions was included, because we anticipate the conditions is based on the receivance of building permit, and that's the timing we are expecting the building permit to be received. We are looking for the variance for the rear yard setback with the idea that the rear setback will be used as a side yard setback, and the side yard setback to the south will be used as the rear yard for the property. The alignment of the setbacks is similar to the ones at 5 Charles Street, and thus would be in consideration with the development around it, and we believe it's not gonna create any negative impacts on the properties surrounding.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions of the deputy? All right, thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? Support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. Name, sir?
My name is Tejas Shah. I am the owner of 5 Charles Street, and I thank you, everyone, for having me here today. Myself and my neighbor to the south, if we can have my address pulled up, you can see. My neighbor's not here today. He's on vacation out of the country, but he couldn't make it here. So we're here to speak in opposition to this minor variance. You guys brought up a couple of good points. Where is this house going to be, drainage and all that stuff is what I was going to cover too. I want to say I've lived there for over 10 years and have enjoyed the peace and quiet that I have had up until Sugarwood started to build. Some of the stuff that we've had to endure is the enormous amount of dust clouds. Although the developer has to put water down, there's never any water trucks there. So we're enduring the dust clouds, we're enduring the noise, the constant rambling of machines now right behind us. We're glad the city is growing. with a growing city comes growing pains, and we're ready to endure these growing pains. But at the same token, we feel blindsided that there was supposed to be green space right behind our houses. And now the builder's seeing that as a potential profit maker. If we can squeeze 2 more houses and, oh, look at those houses are built that way, we can do something similar and do that too. Well, our houses were built that way because there's a farmer's field at the time, and that's how they were designed. Now we live there. Do I want some house being a 2-story, towering over my backyard where I have my pool? No. Do we know? We have so many unknowns, and she believes, and upstairs the lady there says it's a possibility, and she believes. Everyone just believes there's no issue. I live there. Ask me. There is going to be an issue. We enjoyed sunsets, and all of those houses have blocked our sunsets. That's okay, no problem. Growing pains. City's growing. We're happy for that. We've enjoyed wonderful airflow. We can still enjoy the airflow if these 2 houses aren't there. We've enjoyed privacy. We can still enjoy our privacy if those 2 houses aren't there. Natural sunlight. There is no fence. Somebody asked if there's a fence. There is no fence. Grading. Yeah, I don't know how these guys are going to grade their lot. Is water going to come onto our lot? It's going to be a constant problem. All that, Sugarwood and my house and Charles Street, Walker Street is considered to be in the floodplains. So there's a big drainage issue right now. Sitting water, standing water in the construction sites. There's a lot of unknowns. We don't know if there's going to be a deck. Well, the builder doesn't have to provide anything. He just wants to be able to build real tight, and then he's going to pencil something in as to how he's going to put a house there after the fact. This is misleading us. We can't really have proper argument against when there isn't any proper anything from their side. That all supposed to be green space. That's why we sat quiet. And now all of a sudden, MZO says we can have houses anywhere we can see fit, and then this and that and everything. And now there's 2 lots over there surfaced up.
Could I ask you, sir, I do appreciate the concerns you have, and the committee does as well, but specifically, we would ask your concerns with respect to the variance between the 7.5 meters that was required and the variance it's asking for 1.2. How is that going to impact you at your house? Can you speak specifically to that?
Well, if I were to have a backyard at the back of my house, then I don't have the residence right so close to me. This is 1.2 meters is almost 4 feet. And I have a 12 to 15 feet from my back wall to the property line. I have a 15 feet. And so these guys are want to build 3 to 4 feet away from the property line. So it's too close. We don't want to have to deal with the noise. We know Sugarwood is 80% or more investment properties with rentals. I don't want to see students and hooligans living there causing a ruckus and noise and light pollution into our yards, into our living spaces.
All right.
You guys have covered everything else, drainage, decks. How tall is the building going to be? You know, I don't have any windows facing there, but do we know if those guys are going to have windows facing this way? Do I get a chance to come in and speak and say, hey, we didn't know it was just going to be houses, but now there's houses. But at the time, we didn't know if there's going to be decks, but now there's decks. We didn't know if there's going to be windows picking into my swimming pool, but now there is. Can I say against the windows? Can I say against the decks now? No, this shouldn't never have existed. Those 2 lots should never have been there.
All right, well, they are there. So just, Ms. Evans, do you have any response to the comments, like with respect to the height or the distance?
Sure, through the chair. These lots were on the 2019 draft plan approved, so these aren't new additions. It was not going to be green space behind 188 Colburn, which is the existing residential lot just to the south of 5 Charles or 5 Charles. The green space is going to be just to the north, an extension of an existing park. The area is not regulated by Kawartha Region Conservation Authority. I did check with them to see if they needed to review this, and they felt that they did not because it wasn't in their regulated area and they didn't have any concerns. It's not the MZO that says houses can be here. The MZO is specific to the zoning. It's the approval that went through in 2019 that included these 2 lots being here. And I think that's all.
And thank you for that. So you've heard the planner's comments, or it is what it is now. So, and we hear your concerns, but do you have anything further to add to that?
I'd like to add that these houses, if they are going to be too close to us, it would negatively impact our home values too. I don't want to see a subdivision right in my backyard. Like, I can handshake the guy, like, stay away. I'm happy that you're coming, but stay away.
All right, we've made a note of your concerns, so if you just bear with us for a minute, Mr. Erickson, I saw your question of the...
No, through the chair, could the planner please show us on a map where 5 Charles Street is relative to what's around it?
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. Right next to the blue circle here. So this is Walker, turns into Charles. And this is 5 Charles.
Mr. Erickson? Could we see 5 Charles again, please?
This?
Anything further? All right. Are there any further questions of the... Yes, Mr. Strangway.
It's interesting that you pointed that out, Catherine. That area just to the north, is that parkland just to the north there, that square?
Through the chair, yes, so there is an existing park here, this kind of lighter green, and then as part of the subdivision, it's hard to stay steady here, but the green space would extend like this. So it did not come all the way down to Colburn. It is a continuation of the green space that is here.
So it looks like that green space comes right down to the border of 5 Charles, is that correct?
Through the chair, I think to the northern border, but not the western border where these 2 lots have been established.
Okay, thank you.
Don't feel badly. I have yet to see anyone who was able to use those lasers and keep them steady, so not a problem. Anything further of the... yes, Ms. Archer?
Just would like to know, is there any area that this gentleman can put his concerns when it comes to building the house that there's no windows on his side?
Mr. McKinnon, could you help us there as far as the building permit area is concerned?
Through you, your chair, when it comes to the building code, we do not regulate any architectural aspects such as where windows go. We only check for compliance with the Ontario Building Code.
Ms. Evans?
Through the chair, yesterday I did provide the contact information for the applicant, Lisa, to the owner of 5 Charles so they can connect and discuss further, if that helps.
All right, anything further? Ms. Archer?
I know we have in the past, and I know they're all different, but in the past we have agreed to let people build something somewhere as long as they didn't have a window there. Can we do this here?
I don't know that it's part of our mandate. Maybe I'm saying no, but I'll ask the director to speak to it.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thanks for directing that at me. I agree with your comment and would recommend that the committee not consider imposing such, I'll say, an onerous condition on a control that, frankly, the municipality doesn't have jurisdiction over. So this does fall outside of, similar to the building code that Mr. McKinnon just spoke to, it does fall outside of the jurisdiction of the committee. I think the advice of the planner to have the neighbor contact the agent for the developer for the construction group is good advice to perhaps gain some insight into the housing typology or style, and if there's any opportunity to look at addressing privacy matters through that venue.
All right, thank you, Director. Yeah, I think as a committee especially, we have to be careful that any conditions that we might consider, they have to be enforceable conditions, and that certainly wouldn't be one of them. So anything further from the committee? All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. I would suggest to you that if you have further concerns as things move along, you might want to call our planning department or even the building department, and you could voice your concerns there. But at the present time, it is what it is, and we've explained it to you as best we can.
Can I add something?
Yes, go ahead.
I understand. If the houses are going to be there, they penciled the houses after or whatever they did, or they always had them penciled in and we missed it, no problem. But could I buy the lot?
Well, that isn't something that we can discuss here. We have that doesn't involve us mandate-wise. So, but I would encourage you as things proceed that building department and our planning department, please, if you have concerns, you should go to them. And okay. All right.
This member here, she mentioned, could we not steal from the front? Could we not move the whole road over, steal from here, steal from there, and move everything over, and then?
Yeah, we have no jurisdiction there. We don't, this committee. Mr. Erickson?
To the owner of 5 Charles Street. The young lady right behind you was with the company that applied, so you should talk to her.
Not necessarily today here. No, right. All right. Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? No? All right. Before I go, I would just ask the lady that came in with the company, perhaps it might, just as a courtesy, you don't have to speak, but just as a courtesy, I maybe encourage you to, if we could touch bases with these folks, because obviously they do have some concerns, and who knows, you may be able to mitigate or even alleviate some of those. So we would appreciate, we'll just leave that with you. All right, thank you. All right, committee, where are we? Councillor.
As recommended.
Do I have a seconder? Mr. Erickson. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. All right, thank you. Your application is approved. Okay. All right, all things considered, I do believe we're now dealing with D20-2024-079, and this is Lot 71 Randall Street, former town of Lindsay. Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so Lot 71 is directly south of the previous property, and again is designated residential under the Town of Lindsay Secondary Plan and is subject to the same MZO, being Ontario Regulation 355/20. Same as the previous lot, Lot 71 is in this new subdivision at the western boundary of Lindsay. The purpose of the application is to facilitate the construction of a single detached dwelling. Section 8.2F of the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw requires a minimum rear yard setback of 7.5 meters, and the proposed setback is 1.2 meters. The rear lot line of the subject property abuts 188 Colburn Street West, which contains a one-story single detached dwelling. The rear yard of the subject property will function similarly to an interior side yard and is to abut the interior side yard of 188 Colburn. The proposed setback of 1.2 meters is not anticipated to result in massing or land use conflicts. And while amenity space in the rear yard of the subject property is limited, amenity space is available in the northern interior side yard, which has a setback of 7.5 meters. The Building and Septic Division Supervisor, Plans Review and Inspections commented that spatial separation could be an issue, but that this can be dealt with at the building permit stage. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, committee, I would believe if there were any questions, they're probably close to what we just went through, so go ahead, Mr.
I have just one question, because it's a little different in my mind to the previous one. Was any consideration given to structuring the building so that it fronted on Colburn Street, so that it's consistent with 188 Colburn Street West, and that it could deal with the setbacks in that way?
Ms. Allen?
Through the chair, the entrance being off Randall was part of the draft plan approval in 2019, which is before my time. I can imagine Colburn being a relatively busy street. Adding another entrance wouldn't be perhaps as desirable. So they would be entering off the new street. But perhaps the applicant has some more insight into this that I don't, but I don't believe that was ever part of the proposal.
I believe you're exactly right, though. I think my recollections are that both those 35 and Colburn were considered far too busy for any sort of an exit or entrance there, so they had to go into the interior to do that.
I'm just looking at the picture at the lower right-hand side, and not only 188 Colburn, but the one across the street on the other side of Charles also seems to have access to Colburn Street.
Anything further to add? No?
Through the chair, no.
Mr. Finn,
No,
anything further?
that's fine. Thank you.
Mr. Strangway.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Further to Catherine, I noticed on the last one, this one, Building and Septic Division had a comment. Spatial separation could be a potential issue, can be dealt with at the permit stage. So they're identifying that spatial separation is an issue. What do they mean when they say can be dealt with at the permit stage?
I think we'll go to Mr. McKinnon for that one.
Through you, your chair, spatial separation has to do with the distance between buildings for the protection of fire. So it would be, if the building was too close to a lot line, it might have to be built as a non-combustible wall and without any openings, depending on where it is situated on the property. It is only regarding the actual exposing building face. It's to prevent the spread of fire.
Thanks for that.
Anything further from committee? All right, being none. Is the applicant here? Oh, I guess, yes, it's a fine lady again. Do you wish to speak any further to it?
Sure. Just to the comment that was made by one of the members of the committee, the entrance to the Colburn Street was not supported by the planning department, just not to introduce another driveway into a busier street. So all of the traffic is recommended to enter through the local streets instead. In this case, the lot alignment is similar, exactly the same as the lot across, where their rear yard is in the side yard as well. And visually, the lot will look as it fronts the Colburn Street, while it would have the driveway of the side yard.
All right. Questions of the deputy? Thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. All right. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? All right. I'll hear you again, sir. All right, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. So So now I understand where the adjacent house to my house is going to be to the north, and the amenity space is going to be to the south. But this house here now on the screen is going to be directly beside 188 Colburn Street. My neighbor's concern was that it would block the airflow, the sunlight, the views, and have a neighbor so close. I understand with the fire, it protects him from fire if the wall has to be non-combustible or whatever. But that's where the 1.2 meter side yard setback, rear yard setback rather, is of concern to both of us. We don't want a building so close. You guys have covered a lot, and I'm not going to repeat everything that you guys have already covered. Drainage, elevations, building height, size, where the windows are, decks, privacy issues, fire issues, home values. Both of us are concerned for the same.
I'll ask Ms. Evans, but I don't believe when we're talking about variances that sight lines or sunshine or the flow of air
I know.
apply to those things, but go ahead.
Through the chair, it might be something that we would consider, particularly on waterfront properties when we're looking at perhaps views or things like that, but it's not generally views across other people's property from a neighbor's property, for example. It's usually views of the subject property from the subject property. In the case of amenity space here, it would be quite similar to when you have a row of houses next to each other and everybody's backyard is kind of in the same location, because 188 Colburn has their backyard kind of opposite Colburn, and then the subject property would have its interior side yard functioning more as an amenity space rear yard next to it. So it would be similar to these houses here that have their backyards kind of adjacent to one another.
I understand and agree with her. It's similar to row houses and whatnot. But our two properties are unique. We haven't had neighbors around. We're not row houses. And if I want row houses, I'll move to Sugarwood. And it's chaos over there. We don't want the same chaos over here. We don't want all that nonsense and nuisance right beside us.
I hear what you're saying, but again, sir, that's not something that we can deal with here. I would ask you to encourage your neighbor to follow through with the same advice that we gave you to deal with planning or building department and the lady, the company that represents the applicants here. So that's kind of where you are now.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Anyone else wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Mr. Counselor?
As recommended.
Do you have Mr. Erickson? Further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor?
Maybe just a comment, and I do feel for people when they come in here with the kind of worries and stuff they have. And maybe a word to the wise to our people who are selling these lots and stuff at the time, that they inform people that at one time that's not going to be a farmer's field forever, and that in fact there is a plan of subdivision that's going to pop up beside you eventually. So, because it's heartbreaking sometimes when somebody's dream home turns into a row house. Thank you.
I would totally agree with you, and I would say to anyone out there that is buying property or houses that are anywhere near property that's vacant, be careful, because the way things are going right now with the province, it's just going to get busier as we talk about development or individual infilling or whatever. So be careful. I couldn't say it any louder than that. All right. Thank you. All right. Mr. Strangway?
Thanks. Just, and the points are very well taken. Just further clarification, it seems to me that at different times when we've looked at different applications, we've talked about shadowing. Now, it's mainly larger buildings, and I know we've talked about shadowing, and I can remember at this committee making recommendations that buildings were moved, a short distance to prevent shadowing on people's backyards and so on. And yet that doesn't seem to come into play here. I'm wondering what that difference is.
Through the chair, I've never worked on a file where shadowing came into consideration. So maybe the director can give us a bit more direction on when that does come into play versus when it doesn't. There would be a maximum height for this dwelling that would be complied with. But apart from that, maybe the director has more information.
Director Barry?
Mr. Chair, through you to the member, thank you for the question. Typically for low density residential housing types like a single detached dwelling, it wouldn't be an anticipated type of justification study that's needed for one-off builds. That said, those type of impacts on adjacent uses, so the compatibility of whatever the new housing type is an element that's reviewed through the draft plan of subdivision approval process. So along with all of the technical studies that include things like the hydrogeological work and all the rest of the functional servicing work, the planning justification, urban design analysis that was completed for this subdivision proposal did examine the compatibility of uses that staff at the time reviewed. So this wouldn't be a contender for a additional shadow study in that regard.
And thank you for that, Mr. Strangway.
Just further to that, there's something that says to me that if you're building a one-story building, the side yard setback has to be a certain distance, but for a two-story building, it has to increase the side yard setback, and I'm wondering why that doesn't apply here.
Who do I go for that? Director Barry, do you wish to speak further to that, or should I go to the building department?
And with it, Mr. Chair, if you're asking me to start, I would actually throw it back to our planner, who would be able to let you know what the difference in zoning standards are for a side yard setback in this zone, and whether any of the unique circumstances of the MZO speak to increasing the side yard as you go up. You're quite right to the member. You are quite right in that there is, as a design principle and what is often embedded in certain zoning bylaws, that as you build up, you also start stepping back. But that isn't consistent across the bylaws. And I think in this case specifically, we'd be best served to look at the specifics of the zoning provision.
Ms. Evans?
Thank you. Through the chair. So under the MZO, the minimum interior side yard setback is 1.2 meters on one side and 0.6 meters on the other side. If we look to the R3 zone under the Town of Lindsay zoning bylaw, it is 1.25 meters. So in Lindsay, there's no additional side yard setback when you have a second story. Some of our zoning bylaws do have that. In the case of Lindsay, it does not. So it is 1.25 for an interior side yard.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a motion on the floor. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? No, you're finished, sir. All right, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. The application is approved. And again, I saw you folks talking. That's good news. So I appreciate you following up with that. All right. We're dealing now with file number D20-2024-080 and as well consent number D03-2024-022. It's 17 Victoria Street East, Village of Omemee. Did I get it right, Mr. Shahid? All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is located in the northern portion of the former village of Omemee with access from both Victoria Street East and Colborne Street. The property currently contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1962 with an attached garage and 2 storage structures. The application, well, this report is for 2 applications, a consent application and a minor variance application. Before I get any further, I need to make mention of a few things. Firstly, the original applied for and proposed severance required relief only for the size of the severed lot, as it did not meet the size requirements of the applicable zone. However, after comments received from the development Engineering Division, it was determined that a road widening was required. As a result of this road widening requirement, lot size is reduced and further reliefs are not required. I want to emphasize that the applicant themselves have not altered their proposal. The reliefs being discussed today have changed due to comments received only after the circulation of the application. I've discussed this matter with both the Director of Development Services and the Manager of Planning, and we believe that as the change in reliefs have arose solely from the stipulations and comments received subsequent to the application and writing of the report, the application can proceed at today's hearing. But I'll pass this on to you, Mr. Chair, and the committee to make the confirmation to proceed. To help understand the changes made due to the road widening, you can refer to the table shown on the slide that summarizes. A copy of the revised consent conditions and appendices has been provided to our committee members. Thank you.
All right, committee questions, comments? Those in favor of proceeding then? Ms. Archer, are you good with that? Are you, Mr. Sheed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members. Move on to the next slide now. Good. So starting off with the consent, the severance is for the creation of a new residential building lot. The retained lots will contain the existing single detached dwelling and existing accessory structures. The retained lot will continue to have access from Victoria Street East. The proposed severed lot will contain a future single detached dwelling with access from Colborne Street North. A minor variance is required for the proposed area of the severed lot, its front yard setback, and the proposed lot coverage. In this area of Omimi, municipal sewage servicing is provided, reducing the need for a larger size lot to accommodate an on-site septic. The proposed severed lot will be connected to the existing servicing available. Additionally, when looking at the surrounding lot areas, the proposed lot areas average in terms of size with the surrounding lots in the area. The proposed dwelling is also proportionate to the built form in the area. And the proposed lot coverage, although in excess, was originally proposed at a compliant amount. However, it's due to the road widening that the lot is proposed at a smaller size, increasing the proportion of coverage here. When looking at the proposed front yard setback, this relief is also only required due to the required road widening. Although proposed at a deficient amount, the proposed development will be in line with the neighboring dwellings. Moreover, the front yard setbacks along Colborne Street North vary. Many lots with existing deficient front yard setbacks, much less than what is being proposed on the proposed severed lot. With respect to the comments received, none of the circulated agencies had any comments of concern to either the consent or minor variance. In terms of public comments, a letter was received from the property owners of 24 Colborne Street North, across the street towards the east of the subject property. It's actually shown on the slide towards the right. The property owners raised their concerns over the existing drainage issue of Colborne Street North. First of all, I just want to send my appreciation to the public member for their comments. The street currently is facing a lack of drainage infrastructure. For example, through street gutters, and this is a valid concern that we will have to share with our engineering department for them to take into consideration for any future plans or improvements for the road. What helps here is that the road widening that is required from our engineering department on the severed lot along Colborne Street North, which the applicant has agreed in fulfilling, can help aid with this, as there will be greater surface area provided to the city, which can be used to facilitate the installation of drainage features such as curbs or gutters in any future lead improvements. But all in all, to conclude, staff acknowledges and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the revised conditions provided to our committee members. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the planner? Mr. Finn?
Just looking at Appendix D of your report and your comment that you've compared the size of the lot and the coverage to adjacent lots, both the lot north and the lot south of the proposed lot appear to be bigger, and perhaps you can comment on the coverage on those lots.
Through you, Mr. Chair, for sure. So I don't know the exact coverage percentages of those lots per se. When looking at the size, I can go over the size right now quickly. So for example, looking at 27 Colborne Street, so that is the property to the north. That one is 0.21 acres with 129 square meter dwelling. So their dwelling, although their lot is bigger, their dwelling is also larger. And that doesn't include their attached garage. That's actually part of their dwelling. So I had got this information from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. Their dwelling is also 1 story. 29 Victoria Street, that's a bit smaller, that's 0.19 acres, but their dwelling is 66 square meters. That doesn't include the detached garage they have on their property. And then there's 30 Victoria Street East, which is the same size, and they're around the same size dwelling. So the proposed dwelling is pretty much proportionate with other surrounding lots when you compare their dwellings and their lot sizes.
Thank you.
Mr. Erickson?
Excuse me, through the chair, just for information, is there no municipal water system in Omemee?
Through you, Mr. Chair. In this portion of Omemee, no, there isn't. I'm not sure if we go further on to King Street if there's a water system, but I can double check that quickly right now on our GIS system.
Sure, okay. Because with these new subdivisions proposed there, they can't all be on wells.
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm also quickly looking at the other lots if there is servicing in Omemee. But yeah, because there is no water system there, so they would have to be on wells, and then they would have to comply with the requirements of I believe it's the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation of Parks. So I believe it's a licensed well driller that would have to come and make sure that the requirements are built. Looking here at our GIS, it looks like there is water servicing available towards the west end of Omemee, but not the rest of the village.
Anything further from committee? Ms. Archer?
Through you, please, to Mr. Shahid. This new paperwork they got today, the relief sought, it appears that the size of the severed lot has increased by 36 square meters. Where did the sketch shows 503, so where did the extra square meters come from?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that's a good question. So originally the comment that was received from engineering was that it was a 5-meter road widening that was required. Well, it was suggested, not required. And then we had the applicant and our manager, John Connolly, speak with engineering and negotiate a certain amount. And the amount that was agreed and required upon by engineering was 3 meters. So that's why the lot area has increased from 5 meters to 3. No worries.
You will find with this committee, Mr. Shahid, that we have nothing but good questions. Anything further from committee? All right, being none. I guess the only question I have, and it's on page 6 of 9, I see Public Works comments there with respect to these entrances. You don't feel it's necessary to add any condition there with respect to the Public Works requests?
To you, Mr. Chair. So there was a condition added to make sure that any entrance off of the severed lot would meet the requirements of Public Works. I can point out the exact condition number here. Sure, 1 second. So it would be in Appendix E, and the condition number is Condition number 6. Doe.
All right, anything further from committee? All right, is the applicant here? Oh, okay. Would you say your name again for us, please?
Sure, Vanessa Archer from TD Consulting. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for your report. I think that most points have been touched on by the planner. As mentioned, the original application was for a larger lot. We need to reduce that because of the 3-meter road widening that we are agreeing to. Outside of that, again, with the drainage questions that the one public member or member of the public had about that can now be addressed through Public Works through that 3-meter widening that we are giving from the lot. And I think that's it, unless anybody else has any additional questions.
All right, well, we'll see. Any further questions from committee? Being none, thank you very much again. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee, where are we? Mr. Trent?
As recommended.
All right, Mr. Finn, second. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And I think we'll take 5. Order. All right. What's that? All right, moving right along. We're dealing now with file number D20-2024-081. And, no. Pardon? And consent number D03-2024-023. This is 18 Dean Street North, former village of Omemee. Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you. So for this application, we're also looking at D20-2024-081, which is the minor variance that was submitted concurrently with this consent application. But before we move into the evaluation of those applications, I just have a couple of matters to bring to the attention of committee with respect to the advertisement. So as this file is both a consent and a minor variance, there were two different circulations done. The consent circulation was mailed out first, and then the minor variance circulation was mailed out. So the location map, which is seen on this slide, was mailed out with the consent circulation, which is the correct property. However, the location map that was mailed out with the minor variance circulation identified the wrong property. It was pointing to property north of 67 King Street, which is approximately 160 meters west of the subject property. And we did receive some comments from the owners of 67 King Street just regarding the incorrect location map, and I just want to thank them for reaching out on that one. To be clear, neither of these applications have anything to do with 67 King Street. It is 18 Dean Street North being the subject property. Otherwise, the minor variance advertisement contained the correct address, the correct legal description. The sketch showed where the property was and what streets it fronted on, and the correct location map did go out with the consent circulation. And then the second matter involves the advertisement sign posted on the property. So the consent sign was posted on the property 14 days before the meeting, which is what the Planning Act requires. The minor variance sign was posted 9 days before the meeting. 10 days is the requirement under the Planning Act. So the consent sign was up, advertising, and then the minor variance sign went up just a day later than it should have. So I have informed the director of both of these matters. We've discussed them, and I am comfortable moving forward with this application on today's agenda, but I will leave both of these matters with the committee to discuss and determine if it should proceed or if it should be deferred.
And Director Barry, I'm going to go to you. Are you comfortable with this?
Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. I am, for all the reasons laid out by the planner. We do feel like we have met not only the intent of the legislation, but have also still upheld the spirit of what the purpose of the sign notice is supposed to do, as posted, as well as the circulated mail out. So I support the decision of the planner and recommend that the committee proceed.
All right, committee comments or questions with respect to what's been said? All right, can I see a show of hands then if you're okay with proceeding? All right. Go ahead, Ms. Evans. Thank you, Ms. Barry.
Thank you. The subject property is designated urban settlement area under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and urban under the Victoria County official plan. The property is zoned residential type 1 under the Village of Omemee zoning bylaw 1993-15. The property is located in the northwestern portion of Omemee. It's a corner lot and it contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1900, a detached garage, and 3 sheds. The proposal is to sever the lot to create one new residential lot with frontage on Walnut Street West to contain a future single detached dwelling. Looking to provincial policies under the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and the provincial policy statement, the village of Omemee is classified as a settlement area, and both policies provide that growth and development should be directed to settlement areas. The proposal conforms to the applicable policies of the growth plan and is consistent with the applicable policies of the provincial policy statement. Looking to the official plan as the urban settlement area designation in the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan as it relates to the Omemee secondary plan is under appeal. The urban designation of the Victoria County official plan, or VCOP, applies. Within the urban designation, a broad range of residential uses are permitted. The maximum density is 25 units per hectare, and the proposed density here is approximately 15 units per hectare. The VCOP provides that consents should only be considered when the land fronts on an assumed public road and that it will not create a traffic hazard. The retained lot will continue to be accessed via the existing driveway off of Dean Street North, and the proposed lot is to be accessed via Walnut, which are both assumed municipal roads that are maintained year-round, and traffic impacts are not anticipated. Additionally, the VCOP provides that the proposed lot area should be appropriate for the uses proposed and the services available. The proposed lot sizes are considered to be appropriate for the accommodation of a single detached dwelling, and the lot is serviced by municipal sewers. The proposed conditions of provisional consent are included as Appendix F to the report. Looking now at the minor variance, it is required to facilitate the proposed consent, and relief is required from Section 8.2.1.1b, which requires a minimum lot area of 830 square meters when you have a lot that is serviced by municipal sewers but has a private well. The proposed lot areas are 665.5 square meters for the severed lot and 663.1 square meters for the retained lot. Relief is also required from Part 2 of the zoning bylaw, the definitions section, which defines an accessory building as a detached building or structure on the same lot as the main building devoted exclusively to an accessory use. As a result of the severance, the 3 existing accessory buildings, being the sheds, would temporarily remain on the severed lot as standalone structures without a main use until one is established. Relief is also required from Section 3.1.3.3 of the zoning bylaw, which provides that a maximum of 2 accessory buildings or structures are permitted on any class of residential zone. The proposed severed lot is to contain 3 accessory buildings, being the sheds. Relief is being requested for the number of sheds and to allow the sheds to temporarily remain on the lot without a primary use, and the granting of the variance would allow this to continue until the decision of the committee lapses. And after that time, a primary use would need to be established for the accessory structures to be compliant. Now, the intention for the owners here for these sheds is to actually sell them. So they will only remain on the lot until they find interested individuals who want to buy these sheds. As the sheds do not comply with the minimum rear or interior side yard setback, Condition 3 has been included to ensure that the sheds are relocated to comply with these minimum setbacks, being 1.2 meters. So as per the condition, the owners have 3 months to relocate the sheds to be compliant with the minimum setbacks. The case may end up being that they're sold quickly and are completely off the property before this time. But the purpose of this condition here is to ensure that while those sheds are allowed to remain temporarily on the severed lot, that they do comply with the minimum setbacks. The proposed lot area of the severed and retained parcels is sufficient for stormwater infiltration and for the accommodation of development within a building envelope that complies with the provisions of the zoning bylaw. Adequate amenity space will be maintained. As the property is serviced by municipal services, space is not required for a private individual septic system, and a new well has been established on the severed lot. Additionally, both the severed and retained lots comply with the minimum frontage requirement under the zoning bylaw, being 17 meters. No comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public apart from the comments related to the minor variance location map error. Based on the contents of the report, staff respectfully recommends approval of the minor variance as the application meets the 4 tests set out in Section 45(1) of the Planning Act, and the consent as the application represents good planning and is in accordance with Section 53(1) of the Planning Act, subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions? Mr. Finn?
Reading your report, the zoning bylaw permits 2 accessory structures on a residential lot. Why could you not say in condition 3 that within 3 months one of the sheds has to be removed?
Through the chair, I suppose we could have written it that way so they had to get rid of one of them before the others. However, I felt that I could support 3 sheds meeting the 4 tests of a minor variance to remain on the severed lot. I felt like that was something I was able to recommend support for. Whereas the setback issue, I felt like the setbacks were too narrow. I couldn't recommend that those be supported, so I discussed it with the property owner. And because the proposal is to sell them off the property entirely anyway, he agreed to relocate them to comply with the setbacks, but I feel that I can support 3 being on the property temporarily until they are sold.
Mr. Finn?
No, thank you.
Anything further from committee? Ms. Archer?
Through you, please, to Ms. Evans. I don't like the word temporary. They could stay there ad infinitum, could they, if nothing happens?
Through the chair, so they are allowed to be there until the decision of the committee lapses. So the amount of time is 2 years until the consent needs to be completed. So they would need to be, they could temporarily remain without a primary use either until they're sold off or until such time as the severance is completed, and then they start building the new house, which would be the primary use. So they would be accessory to something. But again, that's not the intention of the owners. They are looking to sell these.
Well
sheds.
said, Ms. Archer. I agree totally with you, though. Temporary is a very open-ended. Yeah. Anything further from committee? All right. Is the applicant here or online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? All right. It doesn't appear as though they are here. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application, in support of the application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application. Committee. Mr. Strangway?
As recommended.
All right, and seconded by Ms. Archer. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. All right, the application is approved for someone out there. All right. Moving right along, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-082, and this is 108 Crawford Road, Geographic Township of Carden. Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated in the former Township of Carden on the shore of Canal Lake with access from Crawford Road. The subject property currently contains a single detached dwelling, a detached garage, a gazebo, and an above-ground swimming pool. The application seeks to facilitate the construction of about a 20 square meter addition onto the existing garage and recognize the existing gazebo and swimming pool. The applicant has indicated that the purpose of the addition is to enlarge the garage, enabling the accommodation of the owner's boat within the structure. With respect to the 20-meter water setback requirement, due to the existing location of the dwelling, the construction or placement of any structure in the rear yard would have likely resulted in the encroachment within that water setback. Regardless, the subject proposed and existing accessory structures within the water setback do not contain habitable space, nor is habitable space being introduced within these structures. As such, there's no concern with water hazards and dangers to humans' habitable space. For comparative purposes, the rural zoning bylaw that is currently under appeal takes a different approach on structures within the water setback. Under the rural zoning bylaw, accessory structures, the rural zoning bylaw has a provision talking about shoreline structures, which are actually permitted within the water setback. The rural zoning bylaw provides some examples of what shoreline structures are. And these are a dock, a hot tub, an outdoor sauna, storage sheds, and gazebos. As such, if the rural zoning bylaw were in effect, relief may have not been needed or required to recognize that existing gazebo. With respect to comments received after the report, the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems commented that they have no issue with the minor variance proposal. The Kawartha Region Conservation Authority also commented that they have no concern and that a permit will not be required from them. In conclusion, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Questions of the planner? Being none, is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Wish to speak to the application? No. Are there any questions of the applicant by committee? Looks like it's your easy day, sir. Yeah. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of the application? In support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application. Committee. Ms. Archer. Do I have a seconder? Mr. Finn. Any comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. Thank you. The application is approved, sir. All right. And moving right along, we're now dealing with file number D20-2024-083. And this is 2 Crimson Lane, Geographic Township of Verlem. And again, Mr. Shahid, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subject property is situated on the shore of Sturgeon Lake with frontage onto 2 roads, Bayview Estate Road, and its entrance is from Crimson Lane. The property currently contains a 2-story dwelling with an existing attached garage, a shed, and a cabin. The proposal seeks for the partial demolition of the existing dwelling with full demolition of the existing attached garage. The existing cabin and shed will also be fully removed. And a new 2-story dwelling with an attached garage and lakeside deck are to be constructed. So due to the lot's existing configuration, the zoning bylaw's interpretation of yards does not really translate easily with respect to this property. Additionally, because the existing dwelling on the property, it actually extends beyond the property boundary, encroaching onto municipal land. The images on the slide show the existing dwelling and its proximity to the street. Walking on site and based off the images shown, one may not recognize this non-compliance that the detached garage actually exceeds beyond the front lot line, as the front lot line and both existing structure are set back far from the edge of the gravel road and buffered by an existing line of trees. There's only one other lot that uses Crimson Lane for access to their property, that being 7 Crimson Lane. And it must be taken into account here that the property owner is seeking an improvement by bringing the dwelling within the property's boundaries. The rear yard, similar to the front yard, is constrained by the configuration and dimensions of the property. Although considered the rear lot line of the subject property under the applicable zoning bylaw, the lot line also serves as an interior side lot line for the neighboring property to the south. On site, the use of the zoning bylaw's interpreted rear yard is more comparable to that of an interior side yard. In regards to the proposed water setback, the discrepancy between the existing water setback of the current deck, which is approximately 7.7 meters, and the proposed deck, which is 7.62 meters, is minimal. And as a redevelopment seeks to utilize the foundation of the existing dwelling, options for placement are limited. Lastly, to provide some neighborhood context, the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation states that many of the dwellings in the area were constructed in the late 1900s. However, many also have gone through various renovations, alterations, and additions, some going through complete redevelopments more recently in the last 20 years. Key example of this is 30 Bayview State Road, which is a 2-story single-family dwelling with an attached garage constructed in 2021. And other property that we spoke about earlier, 7 Crimson Lane, the only other property that uses Crimson Lane for access, is also a 2-story dwelling with an attached garage. So the proposed dwelling in this 2-story site does align with the built form and all the structures. With respect to comments received after the writing of the report, the Kawartha Region Conservation Authority commented that they have no concern with the approval of the application and that the applicant has already obtained a permit. The Supervisor Part 8 sewage system stated they have no issue with the application and that the application for a sewage system permit has already been submitted. Overall, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of the planner? Mr. Erickson.
On the north side of the property line, is that water, is that the main land mass water and then more land?
Mr. Shahid?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So the shoreline just runs here. Let me actually put on aerial imagery. That might be.
I'll show you then. Is that water there?
No, that's just a shadow. That's a shadow of the dwelling. Okay. Yeah, the water is only on the east portion, so that shoreline. North is Crimson Lane. Sorry, just to so the viewers know where he was pointing at. He was basically pointing around here. On the aerial imagery, it looks like there's water, but it's a shadow.
Okay. Anything further from committee? All right, being none. Is the applicant here or online? Does the applicant wish to speak to the application? And your name, sir?
Hi, I'm Larry Mintoff. I'm the project designer, and I'm basically just here to answer any questions. And I'd also like to take a minute to thank Mr. Shahid for his thorough review, assessment, and supportive comments. It's all been quite professional.
And thank you for those comments. We always appreciate folks giving accolades to our staff. They do an excellent job, so thank you for that. Are there any questions of the applicant by committee members? All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. All right.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application? In support of this application? Anyone here or online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none. Committee. Mr. Strang?
As recommended by staff.
Do I have a seconder, Mr. Erickson? Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? And that carries. Your application is approved, sir.
Thank you.
We're now dealing with file number D20-2024-084, and this is 26 Ridgewood Road, Geographic Township of Ops. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated prime agricultural under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned agricultural under the Township of Ops zoning bylaw 9D3-30. The subject property is located south of the former town of Lindsay in an area comprised of agricultural, residential, and commercial uses. It contains a 2-story single detached dwelling constructed in 1981, and there are 2 sheds. The proposal is to renovate the interior of the existing dwelling to facilitate the use of the dwelling as a group home for individuals with dementia and related cognitive challenges, providing residents with supportive living amenities in a home-like environment. Relief is required from the following provisions of the zoning bylaw. Section 16.2A provides that the minimum lot area for a group home is 4 hectares. The existing lot area is 0.29 hectares. Section 19.86 defines a group home as a single housekeeping unit in a residential dwelling in which 3 to 6 unrelated residents, excluding staff or receiving family, live as a family under responsible supervision consistent with the requirements of its residents. The proposed number of residents is 10. And Section 2.294 provides that the minimum lot area for an additional residential unit on a lot with private services is 4,000 square meters. The basement of the dwelling is to be registered as an additional residential unit, and the existing lot area is 2,943 square meters. The ARU is to be used as part of the group home, so it's not proposed to function as its own independent unit. However, when we look at its configuration, it could be used as an independent unit. So when we're looking at the floor plans here, the basement is on the left. It has a kitchen, bathroom, bedrooms, living space, and its own entrance, which constitutes there being 2 dwelling units within this single detached dwelling. And to permit 2 dwelling units, one must be considered the primary, and the other must be registered as an ARU. The minimum lot size listed for an ARU identifies a lot size where there would be the ability to support an ARU on private services, most likely. Privately serviced lots under 4,000 square meters require a review to determine the appropriateness of the lot to support an ARU. After the writing of the report, sorry, I'm not pressing the button, but it seems to be changing the slides anyway. After the writing of the report, the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems provided that she has no concerns with the minor variance proposal. Looking to the official plan, a single detached dwelling as well as accessory buildings and structures are permitted within the prime agricultural designation. One of the objectives established by the official plan is to encourage a wide range of residential types and tenures to ensure access to housing for all segments of the population, and this includes housing for families, persons with disabilities, long-term care facilities, and other housing options which encourage independent living. The official plan also provides that group homes may be permitted throughout areas where residential uses predominate and that they may be established as of right in a specific zone. There are residential lots to the north and south of the subject property, and the property is zoned to permit a group home. Policy 5.5.2 states that a group home must be on a lot large enough to accommodate servicing where private services are required. And again, the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems has provided that she has no concerns. The subject property contains sufficient outdoor amenity space for residents and visitors. The zoning bylaw does not contain a specific parking requirement for a group home. However, the property owner has provided that the property does have a substantial driveway as well as an attached garage, totaling of which approximately 14 parking spots if needed. The footprint of the dwelling is to remain the same, and the character therefore will remain the same, and accommodating 4 more residents than the zoning bylaw definition of a group home permits is not expected to change the character of the property or negatively impact surrounding land uses. Looking to the rural zoning bylaw, while it still does remain under appeal and it is not in effect, a group home would be permitted on this property. The rural zoning bylaw does not contain a minimum lot area for a group home, and it defines a group home as being for 3 to 10 residents. And again, this proposal is for 10 residents. As the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems confirmed after the writing of the report that she has no issue with the minor variance as it pertains to private on-site sewage disposal, Condition 3 that was originally included in the report has been removed because it's already been fulfilled. Now, after comments were received from the Ministry of Transportation, commenting that the ministry approvals and permits are required for this proposal, a new condition has been added to ensure this occurs prior to the issuance of a building permit. And an updated list of those conditions has been printed and provided to the committee members. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to conditions identified within the report and the revised conditions provided to committee today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. Questions of the planner? Ms. Rich?
Through you, do group homes have specific requirements for the care of the residents? I'm really concerned with those with Alzheimer's and dementia are prone to wandering, and I'm just wondering, do group homes look after those items?
Through the chair, the definition of group home, as far as the zoning bylaw is concerned, it speaks to that the care that the residents receive is equal to the care that they require. If the property owner is here, maybe they can speak to more of the details of the operation. But in terms of the definition of a group home, there's not specific care requirements. It's that the care is specific to the residents.
Follow up.
As a follow-up then, is that different than if it was a nursing home? As far as care of the residents? And I know this has nothing to do with it, but it is a concern I have.
Through the chair, I believe there are 2 different, maybe on a provincial level, not licenses, but policies that may apply differently to a long-term care home versus a group home. But again, I'll defer that question to the property owner if they are here to speak to what is required of them at that provincial level. There's nothing in the zoning bylaw that speaks to it that we could kind of connect to the minor variance.
I share your concerns, but it's kind of off for where we are, but all right. Anything for, yes, Ms.
You please, Ms. Evans, why is the MTO involved? We're on a bit of a side road here.
Through the chair, they have a certain distance away from the highway that they consider their permitting area. So even if you're not fronting on the highway, they will still require approvals if you are that distance away.
Ms. Archer, anything further? No. Further questions of the planner?
Not a concern to the planner, but I agree with the other committee member. I think the medical licensing is totally different from what we're looking at, and I would think that there is some type of licensing that they're going to have to go through, and all the locks on doors and alarms and so forth.
Yeah, that's not something that we would concern ourselves with, but I'm sure you're probably right. All right, anything further from committee? All right, is the applicant here or online? And your name, sir?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, my name is Kevin Duguay. I'm the planning consultant for the property owners.
Hey, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like the previous delegate, I'd like to start off by thanking Catherine Evans for her work on this file. The service provided and the communications that have been extended to my office, my clients, have been professional and timely. And I wanted to publicly thank Catherine for her work. Having said that, Mr. Chairman, I can advise the committee that we concur with the staff recommendations, including, on a happy note, the comments from Ms. Elmhurst insofar as the adequacy of septic. Secondly, we appreciate and understand that MTO, in their typical fashion, because of proximity to a highway, are requiring that they would be made aware of any issuance of any required building permit. That's very typical. We have no issues with same. And the other 2 conditions, as outlined in the planning report, they're self-explanatory, and we have no concerns with same. The questions that were asked of committee members, this is not a nursing home, and as such, as a group home, would be subject to wherever funding sources derive from this, then there would be whatever their licensing requirements of that applicable ministry or governing organization will prevail. To the committee, Mr. Chairman, committee members, I have been involved in 3 other projects that have reached out to accommodate persons with dementia. And what's been very important is that the the dwelling unit in the space is confined and it's controlled. And frankly, it's generally in a setting where there's not a lot of distractions. And this property, as we know, while it is near some homes, there is not a lot of distractions. The property is generally contained. And there would be sufficient room and space appropriate for the proposed 10 residents to occupy the building. Ms. Evans indicated in her report in terms of vehicular parking and access, there's a generous driveway and we could provide more than ample parking. Appreciate the persons residing here will not have their own vehicles. They would not be generally permitted to drive. The only persons would be those that of my clients and or any attendant staff and occasional visitors. I trust, and Mr. Chairman, your comments with respect to how the group home is operated, how security management administration is carried out is not really the purview of the committee, but it is a matter, this particular group home and the community it intends to serve, there is a waiting list of persons in your community looking for adequate and appropriate accommodations. And I can confirm in that matter that there's a market demand, and my clients are very knowledgeable in the subject and will provide an appropriate level of care and supervision for attendance. Now, Kelly Murphy had to leave earlier. She was online. She had child duty. But if there's any questions that I cannot answer, I can advise that John Murphy is still, I believe, in attendance. And I make myself now available to the committee. But in conclusion, we support the staff recommendation and its 3 conditions as amended and outlined by Ms. Evans. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Duguay, and we do appreciate your comments with respect to Ms. Evans. As I indicated earlier, we have a planning staff that do an excellent job, and so these accolades come on a fairly regular basis, and we do appreciate folks doing that. So thank you again for that. Are there any questions of Mr. Duguay? Looks like it's your easy day, sir. All right. Is there anyone here or online wishing to speak in support of this application? Being none. Anyone online or here wishing to speak in opposition to this application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Mr. Strang?
As recommended by staff.
Second amendment by Mr. Finn. All right. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? The application is approved, sir.
Much appreciated, Mr. Chairman, committee members and staff. Thank you. Have a great day.
And you. All right. We are now dealing with file number D20-2024-085, and this is 24 Majestic Street, the geographic, geographic township of Somerville. Ms. Evans.
Thank you. The subject property is designated rural under the City of Kawartha Lake's official plan and is zoned community facility under the Township of Somerville zoning bylaw 78-45. The subject property is located at the southeastern boundary of the hamlet of Kinmount. The property is located at the end of Majestic Street, and the surrounding area is heavily forested. Adjacent land uses include agriculture, vacant land, residential uses, and a cemetery. The property currently contains the Kinmount Fire Hall, which was constructed in 1978. The proposal is to construct an addition onto the existing fire hall. The fire hall garage, which is used to store fire trucks, also contains laundry facilities, a bathroom, equipment storage, and utility rooms. So with the construction of this addition, these uses can be relocated to the new portion of the hall, resulting in increased space for truck storage and allowing for the accommodation of larger trucks in the garage if needed. Relief is required from Section 8.2C, which requires a minimum front yard setback of 7.5 meters. The proposed setback is 2.5 meters. Section 8.2E requires a minimum side yard setback of 4.5 meters. The proposed setback is 3.2 meters. Looking to the official plan, a variety of uses are permitted within the rural designation, and while a fire hall is not explicitly listed as a permitted use, as per policy 34.1, nothing in the official plan or the zoning bylaw prevent the use of any land, building, or structure for a purpose prohibited by this plan if the land, building, or structure was lawfully used for that purpose on the date this plan was adopted, and the city may recognize that existing use in an implementing zoning bylaw. The property is zoned to permit community facility uses, which includes municipal buildings, and that zoning has been in place since at least 1978, which is also when the hall was constructed. As per policy 7.1, one of the goals of the official plan is to promote and enhance community facilities throughout the city to serve the residents. This goal includes the objective of providing adequate levels of police, fire protection, and ambulance services to all city residents and businesses. The proposed addition of the fire hall will allow for necessary storage for fire trucks and will allow the fire hall to continue to serve Kinmount and the surrounding area, contributing to the achievement of this goal and objective. The subject property is located at the end of Majestic Street, which terminates at a privately owned property, as seen in the photo on the right. The municipality owns the vacant lot across the road from the subject property, as seen in the photo on the bottom left. The proposal is not anticipated to impact sightlines or the character of the streetscape. Additionally, there is an approximately 4-meter wide gravel shoulder between the traveled portion of the road and the front lot line, allowing for space for the carrying out of street maintenance. The existing fire hall has a setback of approximately 0 meters from the front lot line, so the new addition will not encroach beyond what exists today. To the south, the subject property abuts a vacant property that's approximately 37.2 hectares in size. And on the right side of the slide, the subject property is outlined in orange just at the top of the image. And then the property that abuts it to the south is blue. So again, this property is heavily vegetated, massive privacy issues not anticipated, and the proposed setback is adequate for lot drainage, access between yards, and the performance of building maintenance. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage systems, stating that she has no concerns with the minor variance. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to the conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. I don't see, committee, that there's a need to get all fired up over this application. It is not a watershed moment. All right. Or online. Mr. Wilcox. Yeah. Go ahead, sir. Do you wish to speak to it?
I think the planning report is very well orchestrated and shows the concerns, why we're asking for this relief into there. So I didn't want to go into that. I think it's pretty straightforward. The fire department is in need of larger equipment, and I can't fit it in the present facility because the washroom and storage items and laundry are all in that bay. So the only way to allow bigger equipment is to do an addition and move those things out of the way so the larger equipment come into play. Unfortunately, we need relief from the zoning bylaw for 2 setbacks to be able to do that. And I think we provided design information to describe it's only a 1-story addition and the impact is very minimal. But I am here to answer any questions the committee may have. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. We appreciate you taking the time. Are there any questions of the applicant? All right, being none, thank you again, sir. Is there anyone here or online wishing to support this application? Wishing to support the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Committee. Ms. Archer. Ms. Richardson, second. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? Being none, all those in favor? And that carries. The application is approved, sir.
Thank you very much, committee.
we've got file number D20-2024-086, and this is 43 Loon Street, Geographic Township of Ops. And again, Ms. Evans, go ahead.
Thank you. The property is designated waterfront under the City of Kawartha Lakes official plan and is zoned shoreline residential exception 1 zone under the Township of Ops zoning bylaw 93-30. The property is located on the eastern shore of Lake Scugog and contains a single detached dwelling constructed in 1944, a shed, and a shipping container. The shipping container is seen in the photo here, and it is temporary to be used during the construction process, with condition 3 requiring its removal. So the property was subject to a minor variance in March of 2023. The proposal at that time was to pick up the existing 1.5-story dwelling, which is seen in the photo on the left, move it further away from the northern interior lot line, and construct a new foundation and a non-walkout basement under that dwelling. The dwelling was moved further from the interior lot line, but it was determined that the condition of the dwelling was not suitable for the work to continue as planned. So today the proposal is to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a new 2-story dwelling with a walkout basement, as seen in the elevations on the right. Apart from the requested relief for the front porch, which was not part of the original proposal, the requested reliefs are the same as what was requested and approved in 2023. However, as the proposal is significantly different from what was applied for, circulated to the public, and presented to the Committee of Adjustment, a new minor variance is required to permit this new proposal. Relief is required from the following provisions of the zoning bylaw. Section 6.2 requires a minimum rear yard setback of 9 meters. The proposed setbacks are 1.67 meters from the dwelling and 0.61 meters from the porch. Section 6.2 requires a minimum side yard setback of 3 meters. The proposed setback is 1.27 meters. Section 2.25.1b requires a minimum water setback of 15 meters. The proposed setback is 12.29 meters. Looking to the official plan, low-density residential uses are permitted within the waterfront designation, and the intent of both the official plan and the zoning bylaw is to establish a water setback to avoid natural hazards and provide environmental buffers. The proposed dwelling is to maintain the same footprint as the existing dwelling, and no further encroachment is proposed. So the proposal is not creating a new hazard by introducing habitable space into the water setback where it did not already exist. And the proposed water setback does not vary significantly from the water setbacks established by dwellings on adjacent properties. The air photo on the left here outlines the subject property in orange and shows the location of the road and the existing setbacks along this portion of Loon Street. And the photo on the right was taken from the traveled portion of the road, showing the existing setback of the dwelling. Because of how the zoning bylaw defines lot lines, in this case, the lot line that separates the property from the road is the rear lot line. So the existing dwelling has a rear yard setback of 1.67 meters, and the majority of the new dwelling will maintain this setback with the exception of the porch. And the porch is to be approximately half the width of the dwelling. Loon Street is privately owned and maintained, and there is an approximately 12-meter wide shoulder between the rear lot line of the subject property and the traveled portion of the road, which allows for separation between traffic flow and the proposed dwelling, and it will allow for sight lines and road maintenance activities to continue unimpeded. The proposed setback from the rear lot line is characteristic of the built form in this area, as almost all of the dwellings along this portion of Loon Street are set back a similar distance from the rear lot line. Uh-oh. I know, I guess so. I seem to have lost the slides here. We're back to this page. Anyway. start over again, I guess. The original dwelling has a 0.3 meter setback from the northern interior lot line, and as part of the work that has been done on the property, the dwelling was shifted 0.9 meters south and now has a setback of 1.27 meters. And this will allow for adequate separation for lot drainage and space for building maintenance on this side of the dwelling. The side yard to the south of the dwelling provides amenity space, space for vehicle parking, space for any watercraft to be brought from the front of the property to, see, it's doing it again? I give up. And the well is also located in the other interior side yard. The neighboring dwelling also contains a 2-story dwelling, so the proposed dwelling will not result in any massing impacts to that neighboring dwelling. After the writing of the report, comments were received from the supervisor of Part 8 sewage system, stating that she has no concerns with the minor variance proposal. Kawartha Region Conservation Authority has provided there are no concerns and that a permit has been granted. The Building and Septic Division supervisor, plans review and inspections commented that spatial separation could be an issue, but that this can be dealt with at the permit stage. No other comments of concern were raised by any of the circulated agencies, and no comments were received from members of the public. Based on the contents of the report, staff acknowledges the application meets all 4 tests of a minor variance and respectfully recommends approval of the application subject to conditions identified within the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the planner? Being none. Is the applicant here? Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputy? All right. Thank you, sir. All right. Is there anyone here online wishing to speak in support of this application? Support of the application? Anyone here online wishing to speak in opposition to the application? Opposition to the application? Being none, committee. Ms. Richardson.
It's recommended.
Seconded by Mr. Finn. Any further comments or questions with respect to the motion on the floor? All those in favor? That carries. Thank you. Did we miss something, sir, with you? All right. All right, thank you for that. We appreciate it. All right. Okay, your application is approved, sir. Okay, I think that just about settles everything. We got under other business. Anything from staff or anything from Director Barry?
For me, Mr. Chair, you know I'm always going to have something to say. I appreciate the time. I recognize we're running late here. It was a later start. It was a long agenda. Thank you to the team, Charlotte, especially for coordinating all the administrative pieces that brought us here. This was a big one. I do want to just take a moment and also recognize a recent professional achievement for our very own Ms. Catherine Evans. You may have noticed in your reports this month that Catherine's title has changed from Planner 2 to Senior Planner. Catherine was recently promoted into this position through a competitive recruitment process. We're delighted to encourage and support her professional development. Catherine, congratulations again. We are looking forward to working with you in your new position and expanded portfolio. Mr. Chair, those are my comments.
Well done, Ms. Evans. You want to make a speech? Didn't think so. No, to you, Catherine. Obviously, you've put the effort in, it's paid off. So I'd just like to say that we've been watching you now and you watching us for a long time, and you've done an excellent job for us. So all I can say is your work has made our job easier. It certainly has, and we wish you every success. Anything further from committee? I think tried to say it all. All right. Again, all the best to you. And thank Ms. Berry, and thank you, Ms. Berry, because we know as a director, you are one busy lady, and so thank you very much for stepping in and helping us out in John's absence. So very much appreciated. Thank you.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Anything from committee under other business? All right. Well, I would just advise that Mr. Strangway has been good enough to chair the October meeting because I know, as a matter of fact, my daughter has sold her house in Toronto. She's retired and she's moving to the fair town of Lindsay. Yeah, the moving date happens to be the 24th of October. So, yeah, so thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate your help. All righty. Anything further from committee? All right. Well, the next meeting date then is Thursday, October the 24th at 1 p.m. in council chambers. And Murphy's Law certainly kicked in today because here we are with a late start of 2 o'clock and 14 applications. So Murphy's Law. Anyway, thanks to everybody. Oh, no, well, staff and committee, what a team we are. Yeah, it works great. All right, I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Strangway, Mr. Finn, all those in favor? And that carries.